have swum through the oceans for over 400 million years. In this time, they have ruled over the sea. This animal is the shark. Their senses and skills make them perfect hunters and the most feared animal in the ocean. People's opinion of them is that they make coasts and beaches unsafe for surfers and swimmers. But what lies behind the myth of the shark? Are they really the terrifying creatures that we think they are? Are they an unpredictable monster that feeds without a care? Throughout the centuries, the shark has become a horrifying mystery. To find out the truth about the king of the oceans, we have to look closer into the world of hammerhead sharks, manta rays, and bull sharks. Seeking the truth has become a lifelong mission for many explorers. For more than 20 years, scientists have strived to change the gruesome image of the shark as we know it. We have to understand that sharks are the most harmless predators on our planet. This might sound a little exaggerated, but if we look at the statistics, the density of sharks there are, the frequency of sharks, and the confrontation zones, compared to all the beaches and all the surfers that are in the water every day, sharks are harmless. The reason why we think that sharks are so dangerous is because the media has created a monster. The media has portrayed the shark like this because it is an easy thing to do, as it is the only species that combines so many human fears. We are afraid of animals from the deep. We are afraid of things from the dark. We are afraid of being eaten alive. We are afraid of water. We are afraid of moving in a different medium. No other animal combines all these fears. Therefore, it was easy to make the animals into the monsters we believe they are today. But sharks are absolutely not what the media tries to portray them as. Our fears regarding sharks are mainly based on evolution. Before we settled down around 10,000 years ago, we had to flee from predators constantly, which made us into extremely careful and fearful beings. It is very important to understand that when we interact with sharks, it is not the shark that is dangerous, but the situation we create. This is when trouble occurs. There are no dangerous sharks, only dangerous situations. We can deliberately create a situation by pulling on the shark's tail, unknowingly by floundering about in the water in a place where we should not be, or created by a third person. For example, someone is fishing upstream. We are downstream. The shark smells the odors this person is creating to attract the fish and thinks we are the source of this. Whatever your situation, you should stop and assume a vertical position and keep an eye on the animal at all times. That might sound logical right now, but when you're put into a situation like this, the natural instinct is to seek an exit. Where is the beach? Where is my partner? Or whatever. After that, you look for the shark, which won't be where it was, and then you stress out. Do nothing. Assume a vertical position and follow the animal with your eyes. Being in the vertical position is good, as the shark cannot identify the swimmer or diver, as his normal prey will swim horizontally rather than stay in a vertical position. The calmer you act in a situation like that, the less interested the shark will be, as its hunting instinct triggers through the fleeing movement of its prey. If there are no attempts to flee, the interest of the shark dies out. It is easy to identify an animal, especially a shark, as its eyes are very, very significant. The eyes are not always as dead as this, but they move. Eye contact is very important with sharks. They are eye animals. It is a general assumption that when sharks circle, it means they're getting ready to bite. A circling shark is nothing more than a shark that is seeking contact. It is interested in something, but does not want to move closer. In other words, how can it look at us for a few minutes without coming too close? It circles us. It can happen that it comes closer because it is getting calmer. But this never leads to an accident. Our perception is that the shark has surrounded us and is coming closer for a kill. If the animal comes so close that we feel we need to do something, so close that we could reach it when we stretch out our arm, just press some water against its gills. If that doesn't help, touch the gills and the shark will back off. The gills are the most sensitive organs sharks and fish in general have. Only a little pressure against these vulnerable regions will caution the shark to swim away from the human. We try to do natural things that the shark knows, or things that it doesn't know. For example, something a shark knows is another shark biting its gills because of competition, hierarchy, or fear. Of course, we can't bite into the gills of a shark, but we can use our hands to put pressure on them. The shark won't know who we are, but it will recognize the signal and act accordingly. We tried this on all the big sharks like tiger sharks, bull sharks, and the great white, and all of them reacted the same way, like we expected. Despite everything, the fear of these hunters remains, especially as not everyone has the courage to touch a shark in such close proximity to its mouth. Because of this, several groups offer various programs which attempt to turn this fear into respect. For over 20 years, we have shown people that it is possible to be in the water together with sharks. We get people from all different backgrounds: surfers, swimmers, non-divers, divers, people that sail, and even castaways. We get all sorts of people, and we always get the question, "And has anything happened yet?" Of course, nothing has ever happened, because we know the situations, the activities, the bottlenecks, and where the problems lie. These people will be trained with this in mind. So in other words, we train people to fully understand the situation and then act the right way. The right way to handle the situation will prevent anything from happening. Sharks are animals that give out very clear and honest signals. When a shark approaches us in a certain way, his intention is very clear. This is very, very different from when a dog, say, is begging for a treat. It is not begging because it is hungry. It is not hungry. It only wants a treat. This is a very dishonest signal. Sharks don't do that. Of course, we get bitten every now and then, but not because we don't know what we are doing. We know where the problem zones are. We push the animals. We stress them and make them angry to find out how they react. Of course, it can happen that an animal needs to defend itself from what it might perceive as aggression. These deliberately provoked attacks play a big part in understanding the behavior of sharks. The findings the explorers document with these strategies help us to adjust our own behavior when we encounter sharks. Generally speaking, wherever we like to swim, there are sharks, no exceptions. We like to swim where the water is more than 17 degrees centigrade, more than 18 degrees centigrade, there are sharks. We have been told that there are no sharks in the Mediterranean Sea, but it actually contains every species of shark you can imagine. These animals just don't like to come too close to people. They are reclusive. We are something unknown to these animals. We are a potential danger for them. If a shark comes close to us, it must have a very special reason. Otherwise it would not do that. We are in the water a lot and think there are no sharks around. But they are there. They are just staying away. Of course, there are regions that have many incidents. Worldwide, the most are in Florida, South Africa and Australia. This has nothing to do with the fact that there are many more sharks, but that there are a constellation of specific species. Species that are maybe more likely to bite. We have to be aware that there are over 500 species of sharks and only about a dozen bite frequently, not more. Of this dozen, it might only be 5 or 6 species that cause most of the trouble. All other sharks don't bite us. Of course, we have the classic bull sharks, tiger sharks and the great white. But very interestingly, the species that bites the most is the black tip shark. We call them the calf biters. When these sharks bite, it wouldn't make good headlines as they have tiny mouths. I call it the tattoo bite. 2-3 pinpricks, that's it. The huge, spectacular bites don't occur very often, not like the media tries to make us believe. As a matter of fact, there are only 3 to 7 attacks per year from big sharks like the great white. Only a fraction of those end fatally. Hence, shark hysteria, which often starts after new incidents with sharks, is, of course, absolutely inappropriate. My group tries to show how sharks really are. We show that they are intelligent, they have short-term and long-term memory, and you can chill out with a shark like with any other animal. It is important to eliminate the wrong perception about sharks in people's minds. This is the first thing we do in our training. We have to destroy the myth of the monster first, before we can talk about the animal. But because it is a fear that was put in our minds by the media, it is relatively easy to take that fear away. The word aggression is used frequently in connection to sharks to show that they are not just dangerous, but that they can even top that and be more dangerous. Sharks aren't like that. No shark bites just to hurt us. A shark doesn't think, oh, this thing needs to be hurt, so it'll know who's the boss. That doesn't happen. Sharks don't see us as prey, they don't want to kill us, they don't want to hurt us. If a shark bites us, say it gets into a stressful situation, then it bites us as it would bite another shark in the same situation. Of course, it doesn't know just how soft our skin is. So, sharks don't bite us to hurt us, and they don't bite us to eat us. Biting is just a result of the situation they are in, either to get out of the situation or to show us their idea or motivation. Back off, this is my prey, for example. Biting can also happen for another reason. For example, a shoal can attract a shark, and if a diver or a swimmer is close to that shoal, the shark might think they are part of the shoal and might attack them, even though humans do not usually fit into its prey pattern. If a shark is looking for prey, it has a kind of image in its head. That means when it smells something, it will think, "Oh, that's my prey, that's something I know." So now it is looking for the animal that fits into that pattern, looks the same, gives off the same smells and sounds, the same stress sounds. Humans generally don't fit into that image. We might sound like something the shark has heard before, we might smell the same if we are close to shoals, but visually we are not what the shark knows. So when it sees us, it gets into a conflict within itself. There is interest in the sound and the smell, but it looks like nothing it knows. No predator would just try its luck. We could be dangerous. Although a shark has naturally the idea that what they found could be edible, therefore for some peculiar reason they always come back to humans. But we are not, and no shark would just eat us and say, "Oh, that was good, wasn't it?" That, of course, is just in the cinema. Sharks are predators. Underwater, there are no better ones. Their rough skin allows them to reach their prey quickly, and their teeth are able to break every bone and muscle. But they do not feed on humans. Sharks are suspicious and careful, and only approach people on very rare occasions. Accidents with people happen only in extremely exceptional situations, where humans and animals meet in an unlucky setting. Most bites we get from sharks are gum bites from explorations, getting to know what you could be. It could be that you are dangerous, but the shark approaches you as its curiosity is stronger than its fear. It thinks, "Okay, this sounds like a stressed prey and smells like it too. I will put my gum there a little to see if I know the surface or not." That's why most bites we get from sharks are generally not very deep. The only reason bigger wounds happen occasionally is when the shark holds on to your hand and you pull it away. Of course, your hand will rip through the teeth, which will result in larger wounds. But if you don't move, the shark will let go straight away. This works with bull sharks, white sharks, and even the big ones. The big ones do it exactly like the small ones. The most important thing for us is to approach a shark without any form of protection. Cages are out of the question. We only use them to hold on to them or put a sandwich on top. We have no harpoons or anything like that. I personally like to wear just swimming trunks. I like this as you can get as close to a shark as you can. Only this way can you truly understand a situation. Of course, you need a different approach if you swim with a 2-ton white shark or a 15-kilo blue shark, but the principle is the same. Our approach is just not always right for each situation.
Es ist unsere Denkweise, die einfach teilweise falsch gestrickt ist für die Situation. Mit einem weißen Hai ist mir noch nie.
I never have had an accident with a white shark. The problem with these animals is that they are absolutely reclusive at the beginning, so we have to calm them down. It is a paradox to imagine that such a huge animal is afraid of us, although it is many times superior to us in strength and speed. But the animal doesn't know that. These are our thoughts that we transfer into the shark. But if we look at us from the animal's point of view, it doesn't know what is in front of it.
Es ist vorsichtig. Ich bin ein Verhaltensbiologe. Für mich
I am a behavioral biologist. For me, the behavior of an animal is the most important thing. In my opinion, approaching an animal and wanting to understand it needs to happen without any kind of protection or weapon. With them, I would have the wrong motivation, as I wouldn't show myself open to the situation. If I am in the water with a great white, I don't do that because of some sort of machismo or, hey, let me show you what I can do, but I do that because of the interest in the animal. That is why I treat the great white the same way I treat a reef shark. We respect and approach each animal individually and try to find out their motivation or mood, to understand it and act on it accordingly. The individual attitude of a shark can vary and have a huge influence on our own behavior, and therefore determines if a potentially dangerous situation can be avoided or not.
jeder Haiart
Each species has different body language. Every individual within their own species is different again. Male sharks behave totally different to females. That has to do with hormones and it has to do with size. Young animals are usually more brisk than older ones. Animals that have more experience with us, that know us, react totally differently to animals that don't. So every animal is an individual. There is no that shark. There is also not one situation. And it is important to us that we respond to each animal differently, to their individual psyche. Only then can we enjoy the situation fully, and human and animal can relax together.
stehen. Man muss natürlich
Of course, with all creatures that are strange to us and all situations we are not familiar with, we have to exercise a certain caution. You watch the animal very closely, understand it, and try to guess what its next step is. There are sharks that swim directly towards the boat we are on. Some sharks stay only on the periphery. The shark that swims directly towards us, something new, is obviously in a different mood to the one that stays on the periphery. I might be able to ignore that when I'm in a boat, but not in the water. An animal that stays more than 2 body lengths away from me is a different animal to one that is only 1 length away. 1 body length shows me that the animal is okay with me being in its private sphere. It could be that it is a brisk animal or it trusts me. If an animal trusts me, it will not swim away from me in small lengths, but will glide past me. What if I would not know that the animal is relaxed when it glides? The other thing we hear is that the animal pushes its pectoral fins downwards, but this is not a threatening behavior. It is a sign that they are getting ready to flee if anything goes wrong. If an animal swims toward you and closes its mouth, we say it holds its breath. It doesn't know what to expect. It is an animal that isn't relaxed, but it is an animal that will not bite. If we know these little signs, this body language, we can understand the shark. It is the same as with us humans. A person that is determined pushes his shoulders back and stands straight rather than letting his shoulders hang down. If we understand these signs correctly, which we now can, as we have studied their patterns for over 20 years, then we can say whether an animal is relaxed, nervous, shy, agitated, or whatever other mood it is in. Many people cannot classify the mood of a shark, as most information we get about them comes from films like Jaws or similar media. Because of that, the animal is widely misunderstood. Another widespread myth is that sharks get attracted to the smell of human blood. Of course, that isn't true. Sharks mistake surfers for seals. Also, not true. Sharks see very well under the water, and sharks can see colors. Sharks have quite a large brain. They are anything but primitive. Sharks are highly developed animals. People think sharks eat constantly. In reality, they only eat 2 to 3% of their own body weight in a day. So there are many rumors about sharks, but if you get to know the animal a little better, you realize how little of that is true. It is hard to explore the intelligence of a shark, but we have done a few experiments that enabled us to show that sharks have body awareness. They have an awareness of three-dimensional structures. They recognize specific structures and how they are arranged, and can move past them accordingly. They can rotate. They also know where on their body a leech is irritating them. Sharks learn by watching. We made an experiment where we taught one shark to do something. It had to repeat the same process again and again and learned it. Another shark was not allowed to do the process but only to watch. The first shark then swam away, and when the second one was allowed to try it, it got it straight away. Sharks also remember and can do exactly the same thing they were taught or shown a few days back. Of course, not all sharks are as intelligent as others, and some need to be taught again. So, sharks have short and long-term memory and learn while watching. They are very intelligent animals. Sharks have many senses and belong to the group of predators that have been highly developed throughout evolution. Of course, every animal develops its senses until they are optimal for survival. Sharks have more than 5 senses, and probably even have more than 6 or 7. I am sure we will hear about this very soon. Sharks are the perfect predators. There are no buts, no ifs or maybes about it. These animals are a perfect example of evolution, and compared to other animals, they deserve much more credit than they have been given to date. Besides their amazing sense of smell, sharks possess a wide palette of astounding perceptual organs. Their skin, for example. Millions of little teeth cover the surface of a shark. These teeth, on one hand, act as a sound absorber, which enables them to get close to prey without making any noise. On the other hand, they reduce the density of the water around the shark, which enables it to move faster. The skin of the shark also has another feature. Going from head to tail fin, the shark has a sideline organ. This remarkable gift of evolution enables the shark to notice the movements of the water and therefore the close swimming fish around it. With this, the shark is able to hunt even in the darkest night. In the night, the predators not only rely on their sideline organ, but also use their electric serendipity. This enables the shark to feel the pulse of their prey. If a shark gets close to its prey, he is most likely to use its most characteristic feature, his teeth. These are not just unbelievably sharp, but they also grow back frequently. With its extremely lightweight body structure, which is held together by a framework made of cartilage, its skills make the shark the perfect design of evolution.
Haie sind erst
Sharks became common knowledge only as recently as the 20th century. Of course, there had been some encounters in the 17th and 18th centuries, but not many people went swimming back then, and there were only a few fishermen. Encounters were very rare. Then we had the First and Second World Wars, where there were a few more encounters, but these were not picked up on by the media until the movie Jaws came out. This triggered many negative perceptions. But the film industry needed a new movie monster. Also, scientists at that time made us believe that such a monster really did exist, as they were still afraid of the myth themselves in the mid-70s. So the fear was transmitted strongly towards the general public. In short, scientists from this period must take the blame for not exploding the myth of the monster. The biggest problem we have nowadays regarding sharks is that we are afraid of them, and what we are afraid of we don't protect. Sharks are an example of the worst kind of excessive destruction. Sadly, people just don't care that 100 to 150 million sharks are killed every year. We know about it, but we don't do anything to stop it, because we see it as the destruction of a perceived danger. People in general are just terrified of sharks. Exactly why they are afraid, they don't know. They simply are. It is a learned fear. Communal knowledge shows us sharks are dangerous. Therefore, we are not ready to fight for sharks. If it carries on like this, we will not only lose all the sharks, but we'll also lose our seas, as sharks are important regulators of the sea. In an ecosystem without large predators, a shifting of the hierarchy will always occur. With fewer large predators, the species which would normally be their prey can often be allowed to multiply beyond sustainable levels. An alarming example of this can be seen in the case of the marine toad, which spread all over Australia and is now threatening the whole ecosystem. The decline of the population of sharks has resulted already in a similar phenomenon happening underwater in some regions. On the east coast of the USA, sharks were reduced through overfishing and are not able to regulate this region anymore. In recent years, an extreme spread of cow-nose rays was observed, and these already are beginning to threaten nature's delicate balance. In South Australia, seal colonies have taken over the waters since the white shark almost totally disappeared from this region. This erratic increase of population of the seals resulted in many seals starving to death, as there was not enough food to go around. These two examples show that this increasing growth will result in the extinction of a species.
Es gibt kein häufigeres Raub.
There are not many predators on our planet that weigh over 50 kilos. So if nature created so many sharks and needs them to keep the balance, it is very arrogant and ignorant of us humans to just eliminate these animals. This happens almost automatically. Fishermen know that no one cares because everyone is afraid. That has to change. Otherwise, the biggest time bomb in human history will explode, and no one will win. If it explodes, no one can return to a time before it went off. It will all be too late. The damage will be permanent and irreparable.
Dorthin zurückkehren, wo wir waren, bevor diese Bombe losging.
Shark fishing is commonly known only to be a phenomenon of the Far East, but this is not true. Spain and Great Britain are the two European countries that belong to the top 5 of the leading shark-catching nations. In this list we also find the USA, New Zealand, and on the top, Indonesia. Most of these catches never even land on a table. At least half of the 100 to 150 million caught sharks are an unwanted bycatch. Experts say that the worldwide use of long-line fishing has the potential to eliminate the population of sharks in the near future.
Wir haben etwa über 500 Haiarten. Von etwa
We have about 500 species of sharks. About 60 to 100 are overfished. Of these 60 to 100, about 10 to 20 are endangered species. This includes well-known species like white sharks, whale sharks and basking sharks. These sharks won't make it anymore, even though they stand under protection, which is a nice gesture, but nothing will change. What we need to do is to protect the animals that have a stable population, as these can still have an influence on the health of the seas. The rare species can't do that anymore. We have to change our mind about protection to save our seas.
Unsere Meere noch retten zu können.
At the moment, more than 10 species are on the IUCN Red List. As well as overfishing, late puberty plays a big role in the eradication of many shark species. Some shark species just procreate after 20 years. Consider that 100 million years ago, sharks maintained 60% of all species in the ocean, whereas today they just maintain 3%. In this context, you realize the relationship between aggressive overfishing, deep-sea fishing, and the rapid speed of decreasing sharks in the oceans of our world. But this is not the only threat sharks have to face. Finning, more commonly known as shark fin soup.
Eines der schlimmsten Dinge, die wir in den letzten 20
This is one of the most horrible industries we have had to watch increase in the past 20 years. Someone started the first campaign for eating shark fin soup 20 years ago. It was not taken seriously as it was thought to be just a traditional dish for a minority group in China.
Mittlerweile wissen wir, dass
By now, we know that the estimated number of unreported cases of finning lies between 70 to 100 million. Often, sharks are still alive when their fins are taken off and they are thrown straight back afterwards into the water. Sharks, like humans, have a nervous system. Nerve tracts send messages to the nerve centers.
Nervenbahn, diesen Schmerz
Sharks feel pain. So do teleost fishes, and we say they can't feel pain anyways. We humans sometimes have a very narrow-minded way of seeing things, and in this case it is a very irresponsible way of seeing things too. Knowing that these creatures feel pain and ignoring this fact is cruel. Ignoring the fact that if these wonderful and for our world so important creatures will disappear forever from this world, and not realizing that with them we will disappear from this world too, is the pure stupidity of the ignorant, luxury-seeking society we live in.
Werden darunter leiden, wenn diese Haie nicht mehr ihre Aufgabe erfüllen können.
Long line finning is the most commented and efficient method used. Therefore, fishers have 262-foot up to 393-foot long ropes with a fishing hook placed in regular intervals. These hooks carry a lure which attracts a huge amount of sharks. Since these ropes with the sharks hooked onto them float in the water over a long period of time, allowing the sharks to survive until their cruel destiny when they face a brutal ceremony. The ropes get taken onto the ship, the sharks are still alive and conscious, they get their fins cut off and then are thrown back into the water. Now, unable to swim, they await a painful, slow death. Either they get lacerated by their conspecific, or they drown on the bottom of the ocean. There have been attempts to ban finning by law. A loophole in the law meant that those who tried were unsuccessful. Countries like Japan still have not given up the fight, and until they have found a way to stop this brutal murder, fishers will keep on finning sharks. I hope I will not be living in this world the moment the last shark is murdered. I believe with their disappearance, oxygen will disappear. It might be a too simple statement if I say, no sharks, no oxygen, but sharks are the end links to our food chain. Let us now see where we find the base of our mineral chain. The base we find is algae. Algae produce 60 to 80% of our oxygen. They absorb 60 to 80% of CO2 and transduce it into oxygen. They protect the Earth from global warming and give us our oxygen, without which we can't live. We are very naive and arrogant if we dispatch the highest links of our food chain and still believe we won't change the oceanic plankton of our world. We are very lucky if the oceanic We will be very lucky if the oceanic plankton stay alive, but that is very unlikely. And we will face a very uncomfortable future in this world. Sharks are an endangered species. Two events will take place the moment sharks die out. With the disappearance of sharks from the oceans of our world, we will lose the biggest regulators of the sea, which also contributes to the growth of all other creatures of the sea as a consequence. If we fail to keep sharks alive, another climate regulator who turns CO2 into oxygen will take global climate change to another threatening level. Global warming would start to affect the exchange of water between all oceans in this world dramatically. Combined with the need for more oxygen, the alarming water circulation could lead us to an anoxic oceanic. The reduced oxygen and the failure of water exchange and circulation will lead to the poisoning of the sea and mass mortality in the oceans of our world. This has happened before in the history of our Earth. For example, in the time of the Triassic-Jurassic event. Global climate change is said to be one of the reasons many species of our world died in that time. Apparently, the oceans turned green and must have smelt like old eggs being broken.
Es gibt viele Dinge, die wir uns von Haien.
There are so many things we can learn from sharks. For example, the way we humans sometimes step into a new situation. Bang, here we are. A shark would never be that insensitive. Sharks always calculate the risks of a new situation first. They follow a very sensitive instinct given to them by nature. If they are not happy with the situation they got in, they will always show us before they react. Sharks are careful, and if they feel they can't understand a situation, they would rather swim away than react. Often I get asked what I wish humans could see in respect of sharks. I would love that every person in this world could see sharks through my eyes, just for 1 minute in their lifetime.